Yeah, so where to begin? This is another fairly busy Tuesday morning with the newspapers. Going to start here with the Irish Independent Sports section. So on the right-hand side there, you can see, is that 18 All-Ireland medals between them? Michael Darmaccauley, Eoin O'Gara and Bernard Brogan with Sam Maguire and the Lord Mayor's chain of office on stage during the Dublin homecoming at Smithfield last night. And then Declan Darcy has been saying that they're absolutely open to the return of Diarmuid Connolly to the panel. There's no issues from our end. It's an amateur sport. There are no having to do things. It's all about choices. He decided this year he needed to take a little bit of time away, and he should have been allowed that, and we allowed him to do that. Jack McCaffrey, Rory O'Carroll left us. The same rules would apply to those players as Diarmuid. There was definitely a sense that he will have to win his way back onto the panel. You know, that it won't just be like you automatically get back into where you were. But I don't know. He seems to be in pretty good shape. He'd be a good player to have around when you're trying to get over the hump for 5 in a row. And then the other side of that story, obviously, is this massive brewing story. Keane bust up with Arthur, puts O'Neill on the defensive. So that's Dan McDonald from yesterday's press conference where Martin O'Neill said, yeah, there was a row with Harry Arthur. He named Arthur in the squad. In the Mail, it says that he actually went to see Harry Arthur in person to try and convince him or to sort it out. And then Arthur said, look, I'm going to step away for the moment. But O'Neill also said that he'll decide if Arthur gets asked again, as opposed to Arthur deciding that he'll play again because he's the manager. So positions seem to have become entrenched, and you've got to think that it would be a miracle if Harry Arthur plays again under the current management setup.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is we're not in a position to afford to allow this to happen where a manager has to make almost a political decision within his own camp. Does he back his assistant manager or does he back one of his Premier League players? What a shit position to be in, and it's not some place we should be in at this moment in time, because we're screwed really when it comes to top level talent. And relatively, when you look at the rest of the Ireland panel, Harry Arthur is top level talent. Declan Rice is top level talent. It's 2 out of 9 Premier League players that have not jumped ship, but have potentially been shunned over the past week or so. It's a desperate situation. You kind of have a small bit of sympathy for Martin O'Neill in that press conference yesterday, where he's going to get asked about it, of course, but in his head he's thinking, God, I can't throw Roy Keane under the bus now, because if I do that, then you might have to do that to get Harry Arthur back into the fold, or if I'm going to throw Harry Arthur under the bus, then I'm backing up Roy Keane. So it's kind of this implicit political situation which just is not nice.
Yeah, and the other thing that came up yesterday, we talked about the different stories that were out there about the Declan Rice scenario. And so the stories, just to reiterate yesterday, the one that had been in the newspaper was that Rice had intervened somehow in the row between Arthur and Keane. And O'Neill goes on to say, the Ireland manager is also unhappy with reports claiming Rice got caught up in the row. I don't know where you got that line, that the young lad interfered in the discussion. That is totally and utterly untrue, said Martin O'Neill. There isn't an ounce of truth in it. I'm actually pleased you asked me that question, because it gives me the chance to knock it on the head. Rice is a totally different situation. I would dearly like young Rice to play for us, and I'm giving him a bit of time. Rice was talked to by England, and I don't see how that couldn't affect a young kid born in that country. It's a totally different issue. Rice would have been pretty well certain to start in midfield for us. I don't think Harry was a certainty. Which is actually, I suppose, Harry wasn't a certainty if Rice is there, right? I mean, maybe he is. The other story wasn't, there was a version of the story which was that he intervened. The other version of the story was that Keane had said something to him about his family leaving Cork, but in Cork is amazing, why would your family ever leave Cork? And that somehow this has become the wedge issue that is driving Declan Rice away from Ireland into the, waiting arms laden down with cash that England are offering. Yeah,
well, looking at that, the conspiracy that is doing the rounds, and it's actually being put down in print, and it's not really much of a conspiracy, it's not a huge leap that David Kelly is suggesting there, is that it's surrounding 2 English-born players, and ultimately Roy Keane didn't have to say anything to Declan Rice for him to take something from his row with Harry Arthur, for example, that potentially he looks at, maybe if there was any poor treatment of Harry Arthur, Declan Rice might look at that and say, is that going to be me in a few years? Is that how I'm going to get treated in a few years? Maybe I don't want that to actually be part of that. Maybe you can make that leap. And even if there was no row between Declan Rice and Roy Keane, you might be able to suggest that. So it's an odd one, so many varying stories. But Martin O'Neill, for sure, as you say there, has come down really hard on that particular angle.
Yeah, which, I think it's fair enough, really. Loads of continuing All-Ireland football final reaction. Mickey Hart says that I feel hurt about this, but it's not the real hurt of loss. That's something much worse. So he's asking for people to put a bit of context on the defeat. He's also had to go with pundits. He's fed up with the childish descriptions of what is regarded as a marquee attacker. I just think it's a tired soundbite. It really is. This thing called marquee forwards. It's something of the past. It's not about being a marquee forward. It's about the number of quality finishers wherever they come from on the field. The marquee has maybe strength, but it's also going to be a great weakness. If you have a marquee forward and he's double teamed and stuffed out of the game, what do the rest of the people do? Do they say, ooh, our marquee forwards aren't getting 7 or 8 points when we're beaten? I think you need a spread of scores in the modern game and people capable of taking them. Which is a fair point. I'd say if you're Mayo, you're like, yeah, shut up, everybody. I think there's really only 1 or 2 pundits who talk about they don't have that marquee forward. They just need that marquee forward. Like, well, you know, maybe in the 80s they did.
Yeah, like, is there not a bit of truth in the marquee forward point? The idea.
From Mickey Hart?
No, from pundits in general.
No.
That's like you can accept a lot of what Mickey Hart is saying there. Like, obviously you need a spread of scores. There's no question about that. But I don't think.
Who's Dublin's marquee forward?
Well, that's the thing. They've got. If you put any of those Dublin forwards into the Tyrone team, I'd like to know how marquee do they look. Like, it's very hard to tell. Are they all so exceptional? But I do think Dublin is a little bit different. The way they play, the squad mentality, it's quite different. And maybe that would be unhealthy if Dublin had a marquee forward. But I would say that with everybody back, if Diarmuid Connolly comes back, he is their marquee forward. I would say Bernard Brogan was their marquee forward.
Yeah, except that the traditional sense of marquee forward was that, like, your job was to stay at the edge of the square and score 1-6, 1-7 or 11 points, and you weren't expected to track back. Like, it's possible Paul Mannion is a marquee forward, but he's back in his full back line making goal-saving tackles, which is the type of thing that marquee forwards don't do. Like,
well, they should be. Like, I don't think.
Mickey Hart's point, though, yesterday after the game in his interview with Mark Trassa was that the wrong people were in the position to shoot at various times in that first half when they had a bit of dominance, and that was bad decision making, and the decision making that was something they worked on all year, but on the big day, the occasion seems to have got to them, and they made bad decisions. So basically, you have finishers, people who are allowed to kick the ball over from the scoring zones, and you work and work and work until you get that person in the scoring zone. If that person is your marquee forward, like, that's just terminology. But actually, that's more than likely your left half back or your right half back or one of the midfielders or one of the deep lying half forwards who kind of arcs around, finds himself in that position in loads of space, because that's how the team works. And then ultimately the whole notion of having a single forward inside, like Gooch, who you just ended up pumping the ball into back in the days of, and it's not really, it's even the previous generations that we're talking about, the 80s and the 90s, who had like marquee forwards where, I don't know, that's my take.
Yeah, maybe marquee player should be the new name, where you have.
Maybe we should just maybe we should just
Are you passionate about this?
We just retire the whole marquee bullshit. Right, sorry about that. Apologies to the young ears listening in the car. Right, I have total confidence in Ryan.
That's the first time you've cursed since schools have actually gone on holidays back in whatever June.
I know, yeah, sorry about that. I have total confidence. O'Neill backs Keane and Arthur Row.
See, that's the thing. That now the battle lines have been drawn. Granted, it's just been drawn in the media. I'm not sure is that actually playing out behind closed doors. But ultimately, that's what this has led to. Like, you can talk about the end result on the pitch, which of course in Ireland's case is quite a significant one because these are a couple of our best players. But ultimately, behind the scenes, this has just created what shouldn't have been a divide. Even after the Declan Rice situation, if we take everything we've seen on face value, there shouldn't have been a divide. It was a one situation kind of carry on. And once the Declan Rice thing was sorted, whether he went or whether he stayed, that was that done. Whereas now you've got a wider political realm inside the Ireland camp, it seems. So it's just a disaster bridging out of this Declan Rice thing.
Which means suddenly that this match is way more important than it would have been. Like, it's just the Nations Cup. No one's taking it that seriously, although there is the possibility of getting into a playoff for the Euros at the end of it. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, you get hammered by Wales? That's not great.
Yeah, like, I'm sure Martin O'Neill would be desperate for the old format to return, that friendlies did exist, and it was just a friendly this Thursday night. The kind of positive of it all is that the new format means that the actual qualifiers are a few months away and they're not actually arriving now, because otherwise it will be a game of even more consequence potentially just around the corner. So it's kind of a bit of column A, a bit of column B when it comes to winning and losing from Martin O'Neill's perspective in this. And he will kind of toe the party line if they do get hammered on Thursday, that it is just the Nations League. But ultimately, as you say there is qualification places at stake, playoff places, I should say, at stake with the Nations League. And like, there's every chance. Like, if Denmark weren't going to field amateur players potentially at the weekend or whatever.
You better explain that just in case anybody hasn't been paying attention to this. And why the hell would you be paying that much attention to Danish football except for this one time?
Yeah, like the Danish Football Federation.
They hammered us 5-1.
In a dispute with the Players' Union in Denmark, which Kasper Schmeichel and Christian Eriksen are a central part of when it comes to these talks. It's a dispute about image rights where Eriksen and Schmeichel, it seems, have conflicting interests commercially with some of the sponsors of the national team. So, for example, in the Ireland team, say 3 are the sponsor, and I don't know, a player might have a contract with Vodafone or whatever. So that's a situation. I'm not sure what the specific sponsors are in Denmark, but that's the situation. And they want, the likes of Eriksen and Schmeichel and the Players' Union want more individual commercial benefits than kind of a group mentality.
And they also want to make sure that no individuals, so that they won't be forced into it. So, that
autonomy for the individual really is what they want.
And also, but also in a weird way, like the security of the group, so that if they're like, they won't be forced to be the only person in an ad for 3 when actually they have their own contract with Vodafone, whereas actually they're happy, I think, to appear in that ad if there's like 5 or 3 teammates in it. So anyway, Messi's off the shortlist for World Player of the Year.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Is he being punished for a World Cup performance? Doesn't seem that way, because you look at the rest of the shortlist. Are France really kind of pumped in there? Not really. Like, no Griezmann, as far as I'm aware. That's a like
Ronaldo, Luka Modric, Salah. Is Mbappe?
I don't think he is.
Well, that's
yeah, no, it is. So, like, that's the kind of contradiction there. It's like, okay, you can see why somebody might put a lot of weight in the World Cup and therefore Messi gets ruled out. But ultimately then you don't see any of the French lads there, so it's a bit of a strange one. I thought Messi did pretty well for Barcelona in the first half of this year. Like, the club season is just in swing at the moment, so you've got to judge the second half of last season. And like, I thought he was outstanding, so it's a strange one. And I don't know, it's public vote, I think, isn't it? So Ronaldo's got it in the bag.
Ireland may join bid for World Cup. This is this is interesting little mood music while the Brexit stuff is going on in the background. Ireland could be part of a joint bid for the 2030 World Cup with England and the other home nations, the Times Ireland reports this morning. The idea is being considered at senior levels in English football, and the FAI is understood to be open to an approach for detailed discussions on such a bid. Yeah, well, chat to you. Yeah, no problem. Of course we will. This is interesting. The move has several advantages, including that Ireland could be a vote winner from countries that may not usually support the British associations. Well, I mean, if the Irish are supporting it, then, like, come on, we can all get behind this. Like, you know, they have some
greatest fans in the world.
They have some history there. Especially those that may still hold a grudge about England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland having a separate status within FIFA. I mean, are there countries who are out there going, I can't believe that England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have separate status within FIFA? Screw you, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, for your separate status.
But of course there is. Of course, this is football bureaucracy.
Who's pissed off at that?
Well, would you be surprised if the bureaucrats at the top level of any nation in the world, we know what football bureaucracy is all about, are that petty? Well, that would not surprise me one bit.
It would also overcome the problem of including Northern Ireland as part of a UK-only bid. There is no suitable stadium in Belfast, but the 51,700-seater Aviva Stadium could easily host World Cup matches.
What about Croke Park?
It's coming home.
Is Croke Park too big to hold a World Cup game?
Only the final. We'll have the final, lads, but that's it. Not having any other.
Yeah.
No shitty group games.
Too good.
Especially not with an expanded, like, 600-team World Cup as it's going to be in 2030. No. We're not having Botswana versus Northern Ireland.
But no. Like, do they automatically qualify all 5 teams if this joint bid was to be accepted? That would be an interesting kind of manoeuvre.
All in favour of that then?
Yeah, absolutely. There's also mention there in the article about concerns about different currencies, but I think that's not going to be an issue because 2026 has 3 different governments, 3 different currencies. That is Martin Ziegler, sorry. He's got a quote actually from, I think it's an FA source, who does mention that political kind of advantage of having Ireland there, that they've weighed up the negatives and they've weighed up the positives of having Ireland involved, and we think Ireland can add something to our exclusive group, so we're going to have them in there. So if this bid is going to go to the table, which I do believe is going to be the only UEFA bid, then Ireland are going to be involved, it seems, but the vote isn't even for another 4 years.
Yeah, so we've got 4 years of lobbying and talking about a potential World Cup match in Dublin. So, you know, we'll have Euros matches in Dublin for sure.
We'll get Liam Neeson to do the voiceover and try and, take his record to 1-on-1.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's time for his comeback. The Irish news this morning for you. Here's a quick look at that. I hope I did them proud. McCaskey reflects on emotional All-Ireland final display. And then the picture of the Tyrone homecoming there. Hart urges fans to keep their faith as he vows to bring Sam back to Tyrone. I suppose that was the other big news emerging from yesterday, is that Mickey Hart is definitely coming back for a 19th season in charge at Tyrone, having, he feels, got them so close. Tyrone's tactics made it plain sailing for Dublin, Jim McGuinness saying, which I think is a fair point, that honesty of effort, but really, who was saying, somebody in the office, was it Joseph, was saying that what they should have done was go 5-1 up and then go full McGuinness. Right, that's it. We're not scoring anymore. You're not scoring anymore. Let's see how good you are now.
Yeah, well,
when they got the lead, it was that was their chance.
It certainly would have been a lot better than what did occur. I think Jim McGuinness is really annoyed with how Tyrone actually went too man-to-man, that they marked their men too tightly almost, that there was one of their forwards marking a Dublin corner back, and they were looking up the pitch and they were like, oh, there's Jack McCaffrey making a run up the pitch. I'm going to make sure I've got my hand on Philly McMahon here and not actually track Jack McCaffrey back, that there was too much individualism going on there. So maybe a bit harsh in that regard when it comes to the mentality of Tyrone, looking out for themselves rather than their teammates. But there is kind of a nub of truth in that tactically, that perhaps going man-to-man all the time instead of just getting bodies behind the ball might not have been the smartest move, particularly after going 5-1 up.
Okay, so the Predel Arc is returning to Longchamp. It's been renovated and looks amazing, but it's more expensive to go this year, and so that's the lead on the Racing Post. What price a day at the Arc? It's interesting that.
What is the answer to that?
80 quid. Well, 75 for the grandstand, which is still cheaper than Cheltenham Gold Cup and the Ascot, but they think that people are going to be very upset because the price is going up. 150% rise in standard price tickets from Shanty as opposed to. Anyway, a weird story.
Yeah, I certainly won't be going, that's for sure. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is Rare Old Times, songs and stories as delirious Dubs party hard into the night. And Ireland in the mix for the 2030 World Cup, that story's carried in there as well. Back page of the Herald this morning, it's Dubs all week, I'd imagine, with the Heralds. Connolly door open, Dubs would welcome Diarmuid back, says Darcy, and Irish boss backs Roy over spat with Arthur. So Declan Darcy doing the rounds this morning, spoken to after at the homecoming yesterday, and the door is wide open for Diarmuid Connolly. Whether or not he's going to be able to walk through it is another thing.
What do you think?
It's going to be amazing from a Dublin perspective to have him back. This is the ideal situation.
Yeah.
No team has ever been this well placed. Okay, I can't speak about the Wexford team or
no, don't worry, it's fine.
Has been this well placed to do 5 in a row ever. They're even in a.
Kerry were pretty well placed, but this, what they have here is an all-time generational talent pissed off trying to win his place back in the team.
Well, I'm talking about when I say well placed, what I mean by that is that the sheer depth that they have, and it's actually getting wider and wider, or deeper and deeper as the years go by. Kerry, I think Jimmy Deanahan was injured for that 1982 final, and I think a lot of people say that they
ruined them.
Well, it was a big loss.
On.
That if Dublin lost a big player in the lead up to next year's All-Ireland final, particularly in the forward ranks, they're like, well, it's fine. We did it last year without Diarmuid Connolly, and Diarmuid Connolly's back and flying for us this year. Who knows how good Bernard Brogan's going to be next year? I'd say a lot of people suspected that he'd do one more year, or maybe even retire, before the comeback this summer. But has there been a discussion about that over the last few days? I think everybody expects Brogan to be back.
I think you would expect everybody to at least go and try and make the team early in the year. So I think it's going to be a very interesting league campaign next year, and that's where Gavin's going to have to manage the resources a bit and make sure that everybody doesn't come back peaking too soon. I don't know, that's what, from the outside, that's what it feels like. But they might be 5 in a row, We've done 4, we're as good as anybody else.
Yeah, the golf as well is another thing. Jim McGuinness, just going back to his column, is saying that we should actually be talking probably about 6 or 7 in a row at this point.
Well, I was saying 7 yesterday. I think they should stop targeting 5, because then they'll stop at 5 or think, okay, that's fine, or suddenly next year becomes this massive hype point, when in reality, change the conversation now and go, look, we're not into it. We don't want to win 5 in a row. We want to win 7 in a row. And everybody will accuse you of arrogance for talking about that. But it takes a bit of the pressure off the 5.
There's absolutely no chance Dublin come out next year and say we want to win 7 in a row. Like there's no chance to come out and say.
But they have to say we want to win 5 in a row because, like, of course we want to win the All Ireland, you know.
Well, no, they're just going to say the same thing that they've said for the last few years, which is every All Ireland counts. We were just focused on the process, and this All Ireland is the only thing in our mind. That's what they're going to say all of 2019. And to be honest with you, that year-by-year basis is probably why they've won so many consecutive All Irelands and why they're probably going to win a couple more. It's Roy Keane and Harry Arter pretty much in the rest of the newspapers here. Back page of the Mirror is right-hand man. O'Neill has total confidence in assistant boss Keane. You've also got I'll not tire of winning. Jack says the 4 in a row glory is his greatest achievement. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is keep calm and harry on. O'Neill backs Keane over Arter spat. McCaffrey says Dubs scrub up well. And Jack dampens Kingdom Link. It seems like Jack O'Connor is not going to be the next Kerry manager. Peter Keane has gone into favourite for the post.
And what do you think of this?
Well, Peter Keane is the person that I would have been suggesting for the role beforehand.
Don't talk about Jack O'Connor and Mayo. Is that a possibility? It's a long old drive.
It is a long drive. But would it be the longest drive in GEA? Is Davy's drive longer? Isn't Davy going over and back from Clare?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is Clare to Wexford longer than Kerry to Mayo?
Don't think so.
Like three from South Kerry as well. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Jack needs to get a holiday home in Lahinch or something to be the halfway point.
You could get a chopper. I mean...
Well, that's certainly been done by Kerry managers in opposite counties before.
Terrace Talk last night. Interesting comment from Jack O'Connor tonight on Terrace Talk, where he revealed to me that he is content at the moment to remain involved with the under-20 side and looks forward to working with the younger players next season. Be sure to catch the podcast tomorrow if you missed it. Right, well, that's I don't want the job, right?
It seems like it. It also, I didn't hear the piece, but the Irish Daily Star is saying that he was kind of very reluctant to talk about it at the start, which means that he's obviously put some thought into it. And then eventually that quote comes out in the interview. So fair play to them for getting that out of him. It does seem like it's an I don't want it.
Is it though? It's hard. I don't understand the full nuances of who in the board you're talking to. Like, has the minor manager said he'd like the job?
He's been very cautious about saying things. What that comment definitely says to me is that Jack O'Connor has definitely not been approached for the Kerry senior manager job. If Jack O'Connor has definitely not been approached for the senior manager job, then Tim Murphy and the rest of the county board wanted to wait until Sunday. They wanted to wait until the minor campaign was done. Why the hell would they want to do that? Well, because they want Peter Keane to be in the conversation for the manager.
So is that how it works? You have a conversation with everybody and you go, well, what's your plan? Show us what your backroom team is going to be. How is it going to be different from what's just gone on? How is it going to be different from what you've done in the past? How au fait are you with what the challenge that Dublin offer you? Is there a full, come and have that conversation with a bunch of different people, or do you go after one person and say, you're our guy, we need you?
Well, you would like to think the latter. That's how good appointments work, isn't it?
No.
Well, what do you, I'm trying to think. You have your candidates, you have your list of people you want.
Yeah, but everybody gets to
you speak to your target A, and you're like, we want you.
So you've already you prejudged the situation, you've come up with we know you are definitely the right person without actually having listened to all of the available opportunities.
Yeah, well, I would say that if you have a conversation with person A and they disappoint you, well, then you move down the list. Well, I don't know what the order is. Like, it is... I just really do think that means that he hasn't been spoken to by the county board.
Though?
Maybe it should be, but I think it is, ultimately it is up to the county board, and maybe they're kind of viewing this with an element of pressure. He said that himself, Tim Murphy, that this is going to be the biggest move of his entire tenure, and maybe he's thinking I better not balls this up, and I'm sure that is kind of the correct decision to not balls this up, but what have you got there?
A comment from Alan Cullen which says, you'll be back at Electric Picnic next year because you won't have any business in Croke Park like the rest of Kerry. Sheahan, you'll be looking on from afar as the Dubs do 5 in a row. Hashtag OTB AM. Zing.
Well, Kerry just did 5 in a row on Sunday is all I'm saying.
I can't see his profile pic from there, Tommy.
It's like it's a Dubs banner.
Yeah.
It's a twiblet or whatever they call it. So yeah, well, fair point. I've got very little leg to stand on. I haven't been able to.
They've been relatively good winners over the years. I wonder, is this the year where that stops and they just start thumbing their nose and
Dublin?
Yeah.
They've been relatively good winners.
Yeah. They haven't really rubbed it in.
Let's just present yours comment without further comment there, because ultimately I've got no ammunition to fire back with success. They have got better at winning over the years. That's for sure. they've certainly got used to not losing, and that certainly helped them be a bit more humble in victory. The fans, that is. The players have always shown a lot of humility. Couple of UK back pages then. It's farewell to Alistair Cook, really, I think. Farewell to a hero.
Sure. 2019 won't the football final be in August anyway?
Well, that's it. There is no pub visit next year. Farewell to a hero. Michael Vaughan salutes Alistair Cook on his international retirement, and farewell to England's rock, says the back of The Guardian.
Goodbye, England's rock.